So I originally was going to make this video public to everyone, but I decided that there are a few things I do need to kind of guard a bit. And the reason being is I would love to give everything away, just all my information, all the knowledge I've kind of built up after doing this for something like 14, 15 years. But this is how I make my living, and if I just tell everyone everything, my competitors, although I don't see them as competition in an antagonistic sense, in the end of the day, they are my competitors. And I feel like because I make my livelihood, my living off of photography at this point, I can't really just be empowering all my competitors. So in making this video, I realized to discuss this topic, I'm going to have to reveal a lot of what my process is when it comes to actually booking clients, etc. And I realized I wasn't fully comfortable posting that online as much as I would love to. So this is going to be for you guys only, the Patreon supporters of mine. And the topic of today's video is intended use. Intended use can have such an impact on your business. And what I mean, understanding intended use will have such a huge impact on your business, from getting clients to maintaining clients to building out a reputation to being an efficient photographer, meaning you're not wasting your time on the clock and you're just getting as much coverage of that they'll actually use possible. So I need to explain what I mean by intended use just to be sure. And all I mean is what the photographs are going to be used for. That's it. Are they going to be used for a website? Will they be used on social media, etc.? Understanding this is incredibly important. And let's start with the first thing, getting a client. So when a client emails you, it's really important you're not just sending rates back. You need to ideally begin demonstrating your expertise and your knowledge of event photography before they email you. And when they email you, you continue that process. Every step of the way, from your website to your first email to your first phone call, needs to reassure them that this person knows their stuff. They know what they're doing. They are the right match for me, and they are an absolute professional. And one way you can do so is by demonstrating that you understand what the images are going to be used for. How can you do that? Well, when someone emails me, I don't just send out rates. Instead, what I do is I send out a proposal, and that proposal will include the services offered. Those services offered will include all the different shot types that I know I will be looking for at that event. This will, of course, change from a private party to a brand activation to a conference. It is finely tuned for each. And I don't have to write a proposal every time because I've made standard proposals that I can then modify, etc. And so from the get-go, they're like, okay, this guy understands how I'm going to use the photographs. But that said, you always want to have that discussion. You know, it really will depend. You can broach that right away. You can wait, send a proposal. Anytime I send a proposal, I'm immediately asking for them to feel free to give me a call, that kind of thing. I try to make sure we can move forward from there, and I don't just say, here's my proposal, enjoy. So this will really help you demonstrate your professionalism, and you want to make them feel like not only is your portfolio demonstrating you know your stuff, but that you are demonstrating through your words that you know your stuff. So let's talk about keeping the client. So when you know what you're shooting for and you can deliver that, they're much more likely to call you back. Now, if you miss something, but then you deliver in ways they did not expect. So maybe they didn't ask you for any candid photography, but your candid photography is phenomenal and you killed it. That's great. They may call you back still, but if you missed something really important, you're really hurting yourself and they may choose not to. Some companies, whether they're correct or not, they believe they have these must-have shots, right? And a lot of these must-have shots are honestly made for incompetent photographers, if I'm being really honest. I've had more than one situation where they basically had that conversation, or they told me without telling me that the previous photographers they worked with really dropped the ball, and that's kind of why they have this like lookbook and I forgot, I'm blanking on the term, but a PDF where it shows you all the different types of shots they want. It shows you what not to do. Like teaching a photographer to be a photographer, it's pretty bad, but it's understandable because they've been disappointed quite a bit, and that happens. Okay, I want to talk about the intended use and how it should impact your creativity, and intended use and how it should impact how much you choose to stylize your images. If you're watching this, you're a fan of the channel, you know I'm not a fan of stylizing images. I've talked a lot about why, but I'm going to recap that. But let's talk about you being an artist. You might be an artist. You might do this because you're passionate about it. But when you decided to be a professional photographer, you decided to do something creatively for someone else. It's different than creating for yourself. It's different than creating your art. And while I think there is a fair degree of play when it comes to how creative you can be, you have to be able to deliver standard images, not boring, but standard images before you should even be thinking about getting really creative and shooting through things in an interesting way, etc. Of course, it will depend on the type of event that you are shooting. If you're shooting a wedding, there's a lot more room for creativity. But if you're shooting corporate conference photography, they do like some creative shots, but they absolutely need to have the standard shots they're looking for. A speaker on stage from straight on, 3/4 in each direction. If there's 7, 8 people on stage, they need a full shot of everyone. They need a 2-shot, a 3-shot, a 4-shot, etc. So you have to be able to get all of that before you can start getting really creative. And you should also be looking at their Instagram account, by the way, and seeing what kind of shots they're really using. Don't shoot someone else's style, but kind of take a look at what what they've liked in the past. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, you're not the artist here. You're doing something creative for someone else. Okay, back to stylizing. I'm just not a fan for a variety of reasons, some philosophical, but most of them are very practical. I'm going to just shelve the philosophical stuff for now. From a practical standpoint, your images need to match their brand, fit their brand. Now, most big brands, if we're talking about that kind of photography, of course, caveat, they are using a lot of photographers. So it might be an international company that throws events in cities across the world, and they can't have images to post on their social media that are overly stylized. It might look awesome. You might love it. They might love it. But if it doesn't fit their account, it's not very useful to them. If this is for internal use, it's more for documentation. And so why are you stylizing that type of image? And the other thing is, it's really hard to undo stylized images. They're not going to be able to get it back to a neutral place. But if you deliver fairly reasonably edited images, like, it's not a secret for me, I fix exposure if necessary at all. I add contrast, rarely have to do much color correction, maybe bump shadows a bit. I'm not what I would consider stylizing, maybe at all. Very rarely do I do that, but it's always because the client asked for something specific perhaps, or it just really fits. The last Bushmill job I shared, that was a good example of where I did stylize a very small amount, but because they wanted a look like that, but I achieved it without it looking like I threw filters on my photographs. In fact, I just threw a mist filter on my lens and just tweaked a few things, and I got that look in an organic way. We should talk about composition, framing, etc. So sometimes your client may not want portrait photographs, or they just don't want too many. That's another thing. So you may consider, usually this is something they will tell you. If they're like, we're not a fan of portrait photos, portrait orientation, they're going to tell you. They're not going to just tell you after, like, hey, why'd you do that? Because they should expect a photographer to shoot in both orientations. You should know one helpful thing. I wouldn't gear your entire shooting to Instagram, but a lot of clients will post to Instagram in a square, for example, and you really need to make sure you're having at least a few images where you have that extra space. So in the end of this all, it really comes down to being an absolute professional, from how you demonstrate your knowledge, your expertise, etc., to getting out of your own way and understanding you're offering a service, to being consistent. I mean, that's probably the biggest reason to hire a real pro versus a very artistic amateur. There's a lot of amateurs that can produce amazing photographs, but can they do it consistently, and do they know the job like the back of their hand? And that's something people are willing to pay for. All right, that's it for today. I put a lot of work to put this together, and I wished I wanted to share it with everyone, but I'm glad I'm sharing it with you guys. It also gave me a little bit more permission to be more relaxed and not worry about my image that's overexposed. I did promise a video coming soon. I did a live stream recently on low light photography. That video is coming. I am going to take everything I discussed and distill it down into a more compact video. But man, it's hot in LA and I have not been able to shoot. And then all the usual stuff that if you've had a discussion with me or you watch my channel, you know, it's really hard for me to run this YouTube channel and maintain my business. It's extremely hard, and I have had probably the most busy 9-10 months of my entire career, and it was nonstop. And now it's finally mellowing out a little bit where I'm working consistently, but I have a little bit more time. But I really realized I needed to focus on myself a bit, and not just, instead of like taking all that work attitude that I had for my professional work and then just putting it into YouTube right away, not giving myself a break. I knew that wasn't healthy, and so I needed some time. I appreciate everyone that hung in there very much. That's all I've got today. Thank you.